Here's how to play Fly Me to the Moon, the great jazz standard made famous by Frank Sinatra. I'll demonstrate it in 3 levels of difficulty. Before we get started, you'll need a good lead sheet for this song. There's a good one in the New Real Book, Volume 2. You can also get the one I made for this lesson at musicnotes.com. And if you're new to learning jazz standards, I recommend you check out my free guide called How to Learn a Jazz Standard. Your approach to learning a song is going to be different if you're learning a jazz standard compared to how you might learn a piece of classical music or anything from traditional sheet music. Once you've got your lead sheet, level 1 is straightforward. We're going to be playing the melody in the right hand, as notated to start with, and if you want to take a little bit of liberty with the rhythm, you are welcome to do that, even at level 1. It's always a great idea to listen to recordings of the song that you love, learn the sound of the melody by heart. And once you've got that, looking at the page for the notes and the rhythms becomes more of kind of a backup, a reference, in case you're not sure exactly what note is supposed to go where. But mostly, I want you relying on your ear for how you want the melody to sound in your right hand. Now let's look at the left hand. So mostly, we're just going to play the chords that we see written on the lead sheet for the left hand. A minor 7, D minor 7, G dominant 7, and so on. This is all of these chord symbols in root position. And I already have made my way through every single chord that we use in the piece, right? We just need those, 9 chords that just 8 chords that I just played, right? A minor 7, D minor 7, G7, C major 7, F major 7, B half diminished 7 or minor 7 flat 5, same thing. E dominant 7, and then this is repeat. So we have one more new chord, which is A dominant 7. So that's it. That's why this is a great student song, because we're mostly just playing 4-note chords that belong in the key of C. And we call those diatonic 7th chords. The only outliers to that are the E dominant 7 and the A dominant 7. And those are both acting as secondary dominants here for those of you interested in the theory. E dominant 7 is the 5 chord in the key of A minor, and that's the chord we head into. Whenever we play the A dominant 7, you'll notice that it is also leading to D minor every single time, because it's like the dominant chord in the key of D minor leading into the 1 in that key. So that's the concept of secondary dominance. That's the only reason we're ever seeing black notes in this song, any notes that are outside the key of C major. And in fact, in general, with this song, the harmony really reliably is moving around the circle of fifths. So we saw little versions of that, right, when I showed the 5-to-1 resolution. But actually pretty much every chord is going around the circle of fifths. It's like a 5-to-1, whether or not it's a dominant chord resolving to a major or minor chord. It's just the root movement keeps doing this thing where we either go up a fourth or down a fifth, with very few exceptions in this song, right? So if we look at our circle of fifths, we start on A, we're going to go to D. And guess where we go next? We go to G, and then C, and then F. Now here, if we were strictly following the circle, we would go to B flat. We're not going to do that. We're going to skip across the circle to B natural, and then we go back to following the pattern. E, A, which leads to D, G, C. So you can see how almost every single chord movement in this song is following the circle of fifths in counterclockwise movement. And that's why I very frequently prescribe exercises to students that do exactly this. We're going to move around the circle of fifths counterclockwise. Jazz musicians love to practice this way. And it's because so often the harmony in jazz songs moves like this around the circle of fifths. Because of that circle of fifths movement, we get a fun bonus for our left hand that makes this song way easier to play with our left hand. I'll start in root position on the A minor chord and stay there for D minor. But then I'm going to do this for G dominant 7. So this is a second inversion chord for the G dominant 7. And you notice all I had to do was move the top 2 notes down in the C major scale. Then I'm going to go back to root position for C, and I only have to move the bottom 2 notes down. And because the harmony keeps moving in this same way, we can just keep following that pattern. Top 2 notes move down, bottom 2 notes move down. Top 2 notes move down, bottom 2 notes move down. And it turns what would be a really jumpy left hand if we were staying in root position into a very economical left hand with great voice leading. So even at level 1, I recommend you practice those voicings for your left hand with this song. And at this point, we can put that right hand following the notes on the page, but maybe improvising a bit with the rhythm against the left hand with those recommended chord voicings, and you have a great solo piano arrangement of the song. At level 2, I'm going to do a couple of things that don't add any mental load for us in terms of theory. These now just have to do with coordination, rhythmic coordination, and as a bonus, we're going to add some octaves in our right hand. So the rhythmic coordination in the left hand is to start playing quarter notes. The way I'd like you to practice this first is just playing a nice steady pulse with these short stabs in your left hand. And then see if you can fill in the swung 8th note in your right hand. It's very different from straight 8th notes. If you're not used to playing jazz, right? That would sound like and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. No, we want to establish the feeling of swing, and the way that's happening here is with the interplay between our right and left hand. We don't have the luxury, if we're playing alone, of the drummer filling in that swung 2nd 8th note. So we need to create it. However, it's important to understand when you're playing alone at the piano, I think a lot of times it's easy to forget that the quarter note pulse has to exist somewhere. Sometimes, especially if we're playing at a faster tempo, or maybe we're playing more like in a bebop style, we might mostly leave that up to the audience's imagination. Like if I'm going to play, I'm not marking, that's Scrapple from the Apple, a bebop song. I'm not marking every quarter note there. They're moving really fast, 2, 3, 4, and it would be kind of intense to play every single quarter note. Fun, but not really appropriate to the style of bebop. In general, bebop rhythm sections are less explicit about every quarter note pulse. But here, we're playing Fly Me to the Moon. I'm thinking Count Basie. And if you listen to the Count Basie rhythm section, it's all about the quarter note, right? And then the delicious feeling of swing that the band creates is the fact that there's this really, really steady quarter note pulse. And then the swung eighth note pushes and pulls against it. So that's your challenge in the level 2 version of this. I want you to start playing around with the feeling of swing. You're going to do that by creating the grid with your left hand and then pushing and pulling against it with your right hand. So this is what that sounds like, just with the same voicings, same melody notes we were using before. And I might repeat some notes in my right hand or play some kind of grace note stuff just to add to this playful feeling of swing. So as you can tell, I have a lot of fun with that. This is a really fun style to play in, alone at the piano. And what you notice me doing is the swing feeling is not always the same. Right? Sometimes it's really heavy. Ba-do, 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 ba-do. And then sometimes you can straighten it out a bit. Oop-ba-boop, ba-boop, 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 ba-boop. Right? You can almost get to a straight swing feel, and moving between these different widths of the swung eighth note creates this really delightful sense of like playfulness. And you'll totally hear that if you listen closely to the Frank Sinatra Count Basie recording. The width of the swing is different in different parts of the band, different melodic lines, like horn backgrounds. And that's part of why it feels the way that it does. It feels so good. Then your bonus, if you want to make the technique a little harder but stay in what I'm going to call the level 2 approach, would be just add octaves in your right hand. This is a great song to practice this with because you're mostly moving stepwise, right? And so playing octaves is not nearly as difficult as it might be in a piece where your right hand is jumping around a lot. So it's a great chance to practice just doubling every single melody note in your thumb and your pinky. And the thing to keep in mind when you're working on that as a student is that you want to stay really relaxed. You can see that, yes, I need a little bit of necessary tension to throw the weight into the key, but then I immediately release that tension. And if you instead treat this as like the claw, like everything's locked off and I'm going to move my hand around that way, you might injure yourself. You're going to get really tired and sore in your wrist. So you want to think of this as like a lightning strike that immediately releases. And remember that when we play piano, the only thing that determines the loudness of the note is how hard we go into the key. As soon as we play the note, we're done having anything to say about the volume, right? All we can decide at that point is the key still down or is it released? And you can practice finding that minimum weight you need. Play a loud note and then back off immediately and see how lightly you can leave the weight into the keys without the key actually coming up. I have very little weight into the key right now, even though that was a loud note. And then I find, okay, that's where my keyboard releases. So those are some tips to help with the octave technique in the right hand. For level 3, we're moving on to stride piano. This is the most difficult approach to playing swing alone at the piano. It's also the most fun once you get there. Now, because you practiced quarter notes in your left hand for level 2, we actually don't have any new rhythmic coordination to worry about. We just need to practice these leaps in the left hand. And you can start by doing what we call baby stride. I practiced this a lot early on when I wanted to get into stride piano. We actually just stay in a 1-octave range with these chords in our left hand. You could reuse the voicings we used in the earlier levels, but we just practice breaking up the pinky note, the bass note, from the chord tones. That is called baby stride. It's a really helpful way to get used to the coordination of this pa back and forth. And once you have that, then we're just adding in the leaps. So we can go from the root to the 5th of the chord if we want a little more movement in our bass line. So this is 1, 5 on that A minor. 1, 5, 1, 5, 1. I'm doing that on every chord, and that makes for a nice bass line. You can find moments to do approach notes. You don't want to overdo it necessarily like that, but that's another nice thing to add to your bass lines. And then you're looking for good nearby inversions of the chords in your right hand, living in this part of the instrument. You know, in the earlier levels, I wasn't doing much adding chord extensions. I think I might have done it on the A dominant 7 at some point, but mostly I'm just playing rooted voicings or inversions of these 7th chords. But there might be a nice opportunity to start adding in 9ths or 13ths when you get to this level, to have that be the chord voicing for this middle register chord. So here I'm adding 9ths to all the chords with classic rootless voicings. That's a nice approach. You want to watch out for the 9th on the half diminished 7 chord. Both of those options for the B half diminished 7 chord, to my ear, always sound a little out of place. So I very rarely add a 9th to a half diminished 7 chord. Other jazz musicians may disagree with me, but I like the sound of just keeping a rooted voicing on this B half diminished 7. And then on the E dominant 7, you're likely to want to use a flat 9 because we're headed to a minor chord on the next chord. This is all somewhat more advanced jazz theory stuff, but you know, if you're going on to level 3 and practicing this stride left hand, I'm expecting that you're a little more advanced. Stride is tricky. So that's it for the level 3 approach. Let me play through it once with that approach to play us out, and I might play a little solo after the initial playthrough. Oh, there's one thing that I forgot to add I wanted to talk about. Right here at the end of the form, I like against this, even though the chord symbol says G7, you know, this melody note really clashes against the 3rd of the G7 chord. And so instead I play D minor 7, I stay on D minor 7, and then I turn it into a D minor half diminished. Just D half diminished, or D minor 7 flat 5, as a way of like giving even more momentum to the resolution back to the 1 chord. So I really like that. Instead of 2, 5, 1, I'll play 2, 2 half diminished, 1. And you heard me do that already in some of the playthroughs. So here we go. Fly Me to the Moon. My name is Ted. Don't forget to subscribe.